Hi everybody, my name's Michael and today I'm going to be showing you how to use PyQt5, like a basic implementation. So what we're going to be dealing with today is getting an input from the window and displaying it in Python. That's all we're going to be doing. So it's very much a basics course. So PyQt5 is being used in a lot of people's projects. I use it in my project at school, and yeah, it's just basically a really good way to implement a GUI without using Tkinter. And especially if you use the program here, which I've linked in the description, called Qt Designer. It's a really simple way to set up a window, because what you'd have to do without it is effectively set up all the dimensions of each thing in Python. And I think for someone who doesn't really have much experience in using Python or making GUIs, it's just a little bit more difficult. Whereas this way you can actually scale everything. You don't need to know dimensions or what have you. You can literally drag and drop, and I think it's a much simpler way of doing things. So I'm going to be showing you how to do it with Qt Designer. If you are watching this tutorial, I assume you've already installed Python, but just make sure you have indeed installed PyQt5. So it's just pip install and then PyQt5. Yes, I know on my MacBook actually that pip didn't work for me. I had to use pip3. So if pip isn't working for you, try pip3. It's basically the same thing. And yeah. So we're going to start. We want to load up Qt Designer, and you want to select a widget, and you want to create. Now you've got a widget here. And so for this video, we're going to be dealing with inputs. So for single line inputs and outputs, you can use a widget called line edit. So this is for when you're inputting one thing that only covers a single line, or outputting things that only cover a single line. So if you're typing in a username or a password or something like that, that's only going to be one line. But if you would say, I don't know, you wanted to display like a menu, then you need a different box. You want to input like a paragraph, you'd need a different box. But for this case, we're just going to use a line edit, and it's just for one line. Yeah, now what you'll notice in the object inspector is this has a name, and it's called line edit. You need to use this name inside Python, so I suggest naming it something that's easy to use. I'm going to name it input. And then we're also going to get a button. They're called push buttons, and what happens is when you click the button, it's going to take whatever's in this input and print it in Python. Quite simple, hopefully. And we'll just call this OK. And here's our button. We'll call it OK as well. There you go. That's done. That's actually all it is. Now, you need to name this something that you are going to understand, or no, because you're going to need to use this in Python. So we're going to call it J over here. Just because you like using shorter letters for things and shorter variable names. So here you are going to, when you set up a Python file that you want to use PyQt5 in, you're going to need to use these. I'll drop these in the description as well. These two things here, these can go at the top and these can go at the bottom, at the very bottom of your program. And then you're also going to need to use this. So this X here is the variable for our window. So obviously you can use whatever name you want here. UIC.loadUIType, and then whatever you called your window.ui. And you also need this 0 here on the end. Don't ask me why. Right, now we're going to need to set up a class for the windows. So GUIs involve object-oriented programming. So you don't actually necessarily need to understand how it works. I don't know if you guys might not ever use classes before. You can just follow along what I do, but I will be explaining it in using OOP. But yeah, if you don't understand object-oriented programming, that's fine. Just follow along what I do and make sure to replace your variable names where I put mine. But yeah, so we need to set up a class. I'm going to call this class just test, and inside this class you need to put a parameter called qtwidgets.qMainWindow. And you need a comma, and then you need to put in whatever you called your window. So mine's just X, so I'm going to put my window there. Now we've got to initialize the class, and in Python that's done with the method called init. This is a function, but you must call it init. You can't call it anything else. You have to, have a uniform constructor, as it's called in OOP. But if you don't understand, that's fine. Just make sure that you use __init__. And inside here, you need to put self, and you also need to say there's no parents. You don't actually necessarily need to do that, but I'm going to do that anyway. I'd recommend you doing it as well. So parent equals none. Put that in there. Right. Next, we need to do self.setupUI and self. And whenever you make a new class, you're always going to need to do this. And now we've made our button over here, and we called it OK. And what we want to do is when OK is clicked, we want it to run a function, which is then going to take the input from this and print it out. So what you need to do here, oh, there's one more thing, sorry, I forgot. You need to do qt widgets dot q main window dot underscore underscore init underscore underscore self parent. My bad, you need to put that in there as well. That's again something you need to do every time you set up a class. Right, now we're going back to the OK button. So self, and then whatever you called your button over here. So we called it OK, so I'm going to put OK in here. And then clicked dot connect, and then here you want to put the name of your function. So we're going to call our function that's going to run our input box and our OK button. We want to call that display. And inside every function in a class, you need to use input self as a parameter. So you put self there. And here, to run this function, you just need to put self.display. There you go. Here we go. So inside display, you need to set up a variable. So I'm going to call it k. And you want to take whatever is in this input box over here and set k to it. So how you do this is you do self, the name of your input box, which I called input, and then the text function from PyQt. And whatever is inside this box will now be set to k. You can do loads of things with this function. So for example, if you want to make sure something was definitely in the box when you hit OK, then you could do this, which basically checks to see if the input box or whatever is in the input box is equal to an empty string. And if it is, then you know that there's nothing in there, and you can say, please enter something in the box. And if you wanted the function to stop so that the user would have a chance to then hit the button again, because obviously they need to change, so they need to input something into the box, then you could use return. But again, we don't need to necessarily cover this. This is just something extra if you might want to think about. So there you go, we got k, and we want to print k. So we're going to print k, and that's it. Now you need to set up your window as an instance of this class. So whatever you want to call your window, I'm going to call it w, just use lowercase, and we want to set this as it's basically an object of the test class, so test none. And there you go, that's your window set up. And now if you want to display that window, then you can use w.show. And similar, if you wanted to hide that window, you could use w.hide. Hopefully quite simple, but we want to display ours. So yeah. Now, looking at that looks alright. I'm going to save this. Make sure when you save your Python files and your Qt designer files, make sure they're saved in the same place, because otherwise your stuff won't run. And now we're going to run this, and this should hopefully... Okay, we didn't save it in the same place then, did we? Evidently. Yeah, we didn't. I saved it in downloads. So there you go, that's what happens if you don't save it in the same place. Right, run the module, and here you go, your form is going to load up. Now inside this box, we probably want to show you idle here. Yeah, so inside this box, you can type, and that will get printed out into idle. And if you were to leave nothing in the box, please enter something in the box. There you go. So yeah, that works. So if this tutorial was helpful to you, please leave a like. And I'm happy to do more in-depth Python tutorials or PyQt tutorials or whatever. Just leave a comment in the description or send me a tweet with suggestions for videos. I'm going to be working on some new tech videos as well. So yeah, thanks a lot for watching. And if this video is helpful, leave a like. And that's it. Thank you. Goodbye.